Best tools for engaging new audiences. I know a lot of you have different suggestions and different ideas, but the one thing that we want to suggest, and the one thing that I think our presentation will bring out, is that self-awareness is probably the best tool that you can use for engaging your new audience.
So we know that you all are here from various places, and we know that you're going to be taking some stuff back to your networks and your alumni group. So we want to actually give you a tool that you perhaps might want to do with your board. And I want to have a look, there's a lot of caveats in terms of filling this out, but we have a little bit of a mini worksheet that's going to walk you sort of reflectively who you think your network is, right, or who you think your alumni group is. So we'll wait for those to pass around. This by no means, I'm not flexing this, we're not taking this, right? So it's not like a test that we're going to say like this network's been bad because they don't have none of this. Right? This is really a chance as a tool for you to really think about what your networks look like, what they could be. And in all honesty, UCLA is a very diverse place, and we do have a principles of community here where we hope to be a place that everyone feels welcome, and we hope that carries out in our alumni communities. Right? So as we go through this, it's more so of your self-perception of your group, and then we also can talk about what the demographics are later. Okay? So the first question here, and we're going to have you sort of fill this out as we go. We want you to first think about your board. Okay? So think about your board. How big are your boards, roughly? Shout some numbers. 8, 9, 7, 8, 9, 10, 4. What's the highest number? So was it 15?
Yeah, we have 15.
15. So, you know, from 4 to 15, that's a really good size of different perspectives, but it doesn't encapture all, right? And so we're going to try to sort of lay out, does the personality of the people on your board, is it going to reflect what's actually your membership? So the first question, total number of board members. Put that in. So this one, second one. What do you think the average number of years service on your board is? 2. Some people have term limits, right? 2 years. Can I hear some other ones?
Service just on this board or
20 years? 20 years on a board? Any other ones? Less than 1 year? 10 years on a board. Okay, so that's something to think about, right? Third one, what age do you all average? Latinos, average age? I'll probably say early 30s, right? Lambda? Early 30s?
Channel Islands, we got 3 that are above 50 and 3 that are 30-ish.
Okay, you're easy, right now.
Yeah.
West side?
Probably 30s average.
Yeah.
New.
We have 2012, 2013, 2014.
Yeah, do you see?
I'd say early mid 20s.
Colorado?
25, 34.
All right. Okay, so we're seeing the age, right? Next one. This is actually really mixed, and I actually going to appreciate this one. Gender-wise, more women, more men.
All women.
Southeast? 10 Islands? Filipino?
We have 50-50.
We don't operate in the gender.
There you go. Of course, like that. Love you all. West side?
Close.
Yeah. DC?
Depends.
Depends.
There you go. Board members.
Board members only.
Yeah.
50-50?
Pretty much easy.
Pretty much even. Okay. The other one, I put this one in a lot because we've actually, clearly I'm a little bit biased as I'm a diversity practitioner, right? Around thinking about sexual orientation, but sometimes our programming can sway and make people not want to come or come based on what it is. Like if you ever do a singles night, right, which way do you go, right? Or if you think about some ways that we do sort of like speed dating, those things can really have an effect. So sexual orientation-wise, and you might not know.
Are you going to the board or?
Board, just the board. And you might not know. 20%? Anyone else? And then this one, sometimes we say people are coming from highlight may lead a certain way, but political affiliation, liberal to conservative, liberal. I should have sounded actually because there was actually one network that was really struggling because something did come up. They wanted to support undocumented students. And the group felt very divided about that, right? And it was just sometimes an assumption that maybe this group assumed that everyone was more liberal, but it did cause some friction. I'm not talking about you. Okay, this one, 7, region and location. Because you think about your area geographically where it covers, do you find yourself concentrated, the board concentrated in one place more than others? Within your area?
Yeah, all our board members live in the same city, but our, yeah, so we have a lot of our events there.
And what network are you in?
Orange County, so all the North Orange County people are like, well, you know, it's too far down to go on the line.
How about PAA? Because you actually have to cycle your meetings now, right? Where are you all located?
So there's a good number in South Bay, so we'll do some meetings there. We cycle between downtown LA, South Bay, and then West Silver.
For their board meetings. Right. Any other one networks that want to share?
Half live outside the west side.
Half of them live outside on the west side. Well, actually, there's living and working, right? Right. So sometimes it might be easier to catch a meeting if you want to.
He recruited all of us from outside the West.
And then I guess I'd ask you to flip over and maybe take a minute, maybe talk to the folks that are in your region. What do you think your membership is? So not the board, non-board. Whatever you want to consider who you want to recruit.
There's a good point right here. She said, are we talking about the ones who show up?
So why don't you take 4 minutes to do that and we'll come back and share some thoughts. If it works, we're not going to to make sure that we do one South Bay, downtown LA, and separate. One thing I actually really appreciate about Lambda is they actually built into their bylaws that the 2 co-chairs of the network have to be of differing gender identities, right? Because there was such a worry around gender balance in there. So there are certain ways that I've seen some mechanisms where when we think about this, that get built into sort of the ways networks have done things. APA, UCLA sort of had this issue too. They had a lot more men on the board, so the programming really reflected all men stuff. So now we made some ground, so they have one token women's event every year. And actually it was one of our most successful ones. They did APA Entrepreneurial Women in Pasadena, and where we opened up the soap kitchen. It was run by a Bruin, for those that know Pasadena well. And we had 75 new women show up, right, to this stuff. So, you know, we offer this as a tool for you to think about who your makeup is, because sometimes those ideas don't come out, right? And to know where you're in the deficit, sometimes your program you go towards that way. Is there any other examples folks have like sort of struggled with that want to share? Sorry to put you all on last year. Any other ones?
So we have a few self-identified LGBT people on our board, and some of them, they're kind of divided on how they want us to help. So like obviously when Williams Institute, UCLA Williams Institute is out there, we can fully support their events or what have you, but obviously we try to stay out of politics. It's just such a political town anyway. But there are definitely diversity organizations that are for alumni groups, but they're not, we don't have a lot of buy-in, we don't have any control over the events or what they And you get lobbied essentially to advertise. There's no, I'm specifically talking about LGBT organizations, because there aren't enough alums from a specific university in any city to really have their own group. So it'd be like, it's like, you know, Cornell and Cal and so like all joined Lavender League. Well, we've been asked to join Lavender League, but we don't really know what their membership entails and like how to support that organization. Because we don't necessarily want to advertise an event that will only serve, you know, XYZ or a little bit of our population, or how to market that, especially if we have no buy-in or control.
And I think that's why the other session that's going on right now is somewhat important, right? It talks about curriculum planning throughout the year. And sometimes we get to these places where we're programming by program, like get this one done, then the next one, get this one, so it's sort of nice to see the whole spread of what you have, because maybe it's like, there's ways for us to sort of fit this in so everyone feels like they're included. But just to answer your question, nice group to connect with would be Lambda, because we are part of the Ivy Plus consortium on the west side of the country, and they can share their best practice on how they get involved with that. Any other questions? Or any examples that you feel like you had to make an adjust given what your board is and what you think your membership is? Any other examples from you?
One of the things we found is that, especially when people do board meetings during the week, because they don't want to drive against traffic and things like that, they'll schedule board meetings in town where they're working. But then, since they're there already, they'll schedule their events there as well. So another thing I suggested, I know someone mentioned that where you have your board meetings is typically, since everyone lives there, that's where you have your events. Every once in a while, try to plan something that's, you know, outside just to see if you can go out with an audience. Because a lot of times, even if you have that one event and people come and people bond and like the people that are there at the event, once you do an event that's farther away from them, they'll still be unlikely to go because they had a good time. So it's not necessarily the distance, it's that first time that they go, they just want to have that good feeling of the event. So it's something to think about.
Yeah, one guy who comes to our board meetings once in a while, he's not on board, but we had him organize community events because he does live up in North Orange County, and I mean it's slowly growing, and so the word is getting out there, and so the attendance is greater than it was before. But, yeah, you're trying to branch out.
I'm in Boston, and it's a place where a lot of people don't have cars. So there definitely are alums out in the suburbs that looking for dinner for 12 strangers. There's like, they build up in Wells late, but it's hard to plan anything because like I don't have a car, you know, so we do mostly in the city, but I think we are leaving out people out there who once in a while they come in. But
And you know, some of the things that I've seen with some networks, you know, maybe the board can't be there, but if it's a good way to recruit another volunteer to help us with certain areas, I know that's been extremely useful for some groups.
One of the things we face is our board is typically on the older side, so it's been hard with young alumni engagement, especially I'm the chair, but if I can't do anything, or I'm sick or something, well, there's no one else. So it's been a bit of a difficulty just sort of getting everything together because sort of the dichotomy of the board. So we're trying to bring on younger people, but again, it's a bit of a hard sell to do that. So that's sort of what we face.
One of the things that I was talking to UCLA about earlier was they had the same issue, and they were thinking about maybe having a young alumni board, and what that young alumni board would do is meet on their own and then report back to the president, and that also helps with transition because when you have people in positions for a while that are on your board that are older, it's easier to transition if you've already been in a leadership position as opposed to just coming in new and fresh and being secretary or vice president.
Oh, totally. We just need to get the people. You can't have a board if it's just one person. So it's sort of getting the numbers first and foremost, and getting the biggest also issue is young alums are very hesitant to commit to doing anything along those lines. So it's been a slow process of about 4 years of me doing this to get people engaged.
Have you considered taking advantage of the skills that those older board members may have and offering maybe a professional enrichment mixer where you invite young alumni to come and listen to one of the older speak? That is specifically directed at those young
The Bruins professionals, so there's been a bit of a mix of that, and so nobody wants to sort of step on anyone else's toes, and in transition as a board as well, so with things transitioning in each side, it's somewhere to approach. And they also have a young alumni professional, which we don't know about, because we were never sort of introduced. So we're more than happy to work together, but we need to know who people are in order to do that.
What's your network?
Bay Area Bruins.
So I think that's a good segue actually for our next area. So I'll say between all of us, we don't have all the answers because I know everyone's situation is so unique to them, right? Given who your populations are. So what we're going to try to do is we've been on sort of the seek of like how we can engage more alumni, right? We have 416,000 alumni. You know, our jobs in addition to yours is to get more involved. And so we're going to be focusing in 2 areas that we wanted to give you sort of our own field research that we've been doing to share that with you all, so see if it equips you. So I'm going to kick it over to Angela. And I would say this thing too. We have 2 ways of engaging, programmatically with people, right? And then also based on how Bruins identify, right? And so that's one of the 2 areas that I'm going to sort of talk about. So Angela?
Thank you. My name is Angela Scales. I'm the Senior Director of Young Alumni and Student Engagement here. I graduated from UCLA in 2003, and I've worked here at the Alumni Association for almost 10 years now. Something that Julie referenced this morning was the GG&A report that we did that really was the start of a large restructuring. And one of the pieces of that restructuring was the growth in this new Young Alumni team. And one of the things that really built that was that in looking at the data, someone had mentioned a question about demographics, is that we found that about 47% of our alumni base is under the age of 40. And so UCLA is a very young university. And so in looking at that, and looking at a young alumni team, we said, wow, almost 50% of our alumni are under the age of 40, and we're not really doing anything targeted for that population. So hence the new young alumni team, which works in tandem with our student engagement. So one of the things that was really important to our team, there's 3 women who are on this team, we're all Bruins and we're all under the age of 40, is we said it's really important that we not program to ourselves, because while we're in this audience, it's imperative that we don't come up with ideas and say, oh, that's really cool, let's do that event, I'm sure people would be interested in it. And so we embarked on some interviews across the country with young alumni because we wanted to find out the answers to some different questions, such as how do you connect to UCLA? Do you feel connected? How do you want to receive information from us? And what types of events would you be interested in going to? What are you not interested in going to? So we did that everywhere from the Bay Area to New York, LA, and Orange County, and it's ongoing. Sandy, who's doing the presentation in the other room, continues to meet one-on-one with young alumni every week, getting feedback, hearing what they're interested in, and it's been really fruitful. And so what I want to do is share a little bit of that research and what those young alumni candidly told us about what they'd be interested in. Our team also looks at leadership development and trying to cultivate the young alumni chairs in each network. In fact, Irene and I were on the phone just a few weeks ago, and now we get to see each other in person, and talking to those chairs in different areas about the things that we've learned, the events that have worked, maybe what hasn't worked, so that hopefully our team can be an additional resource to the young alumni chair in each network. And that's growing. Some networks don't have one yet. The ones that do, we want to be there for them to, bounce ideas off of and just, be a resource. And then the last thing I'll touch on is communications. One thing we found when we started the team was that we were sending out a version of Connect called Young Alumni Connect every month, but it was essentially the exact same content with the Young Alumni stamp at the top, and there wasn't really anything that we were curating that we thought was going to appeal to this audience. And so part of Sandy's job is that she actually curates specific content for Young Alumni Connect every month. And we've seen a great response from alumni. And in building that content, we took information from the interviews as well to kind of say, what would you want to read about? And it was quite fascinating. A lot of the young alumni said to us, it's really great to hear about the newest scientific discovery or what this Bruin celebrity did, but we really like to hear about what our classmates are doing now. We want to hear about those fellow Bruins that lived on our floor that are doing extraordinary things. And so that's kind of part of how we built out both the content of Young Alumni Connect, but also the Young Alumni Facebook page, because we found that people got really excited to see someone featured as Bruin of the Day that they knew or they went to class with, because if they wanted to hear about the latest thing that Russell Westbrook did, they could just go to ESPN. They could find out on the newsroom, but they wanted to hear about their colleagues and their classmates. So it was,
Angela, just out of curiosity, how did you figure young alum is up to 40? Is a 22-year-old and a 40-year-old a different generation?
Exactly. you actually just gave me a perfect lead-in. So one of the things that we wanted to do in terms of thinking about events was in a previous iteration of this work, we had really tried to get everybody at events and appeal to everyone, and we recognized in talking to the young alumni and just thinking about our peers that wasn't realistic, that what someone wants at 22 and at 35 are completely different. And so we've actually built our events around the fact that each event and each kind of topic we're acknowledging is not going to be for that whole audience, and we've seen how alumni have responded. So
just to respond to the age bracket, because I agree it's a bit of a stretch, is that's really what our colleagues around the country use. When I mentioned that external review that we did, that's the bracket that is defined around in alumni best practices.
So one of the things...
We didn't make that up.
Yeah. So events that grow with us. And so what we realized in that is that that was different in those different segments of the population. And we also heard that, and maybe it was just kind of a young alumni vibe that they were giving us, but they said, no, we want to know when we go to an event what we're going to get out of it. We want it to be specific and targeted. And so we were thinking about alumni panels, which is something we do a lot of. And we realized they don't want to go to an event with a panel of one doctor, one lawyer, one entertainment, and one teacher, because maybe only one panelist then is really speaking to their career interest or to networking within that field. And so they really showed us that some more industry-specific events and things that were more in a niche were going to appeal more to young alumni because they would know exactly what they were getting. And we might have a smaller event, but there would be more satisfaction because they were coming specifically for an interest in networking in that field. So two examples, we did a Silicon Beach event that had a panel of all young alumni who work in Silicon Beach, because that's kind of a growing area in Santa Monica and Venice. We also did a panel specifically about nonprofit culture. We've gotten feedback from some young alumni, like don't forget about education and nonprofits in that field. And so we did an event with 5 or 6 alumni that all worked in that field. We also did an event up in San Francisco in November called Women Breaking Barriers, and we focused on women who work in either tech or who are entrepreneurs. And we had it hosted by Jessie Draper, the host of the Valley Girl Show, and it was fantastic. We had men and women there interested in hearing about the entrepreneurial path that each of the women had taken. And so that's kind of an example of narrowing the idea of what that event is, knowing it's not going to have as large of a crowd, but that we're speaking more to a specific interest for the young alumni. So in thinking about that, grow with me, we realized that something about house hunting is not going to be for that 23 to 28 range probably, but maybe a slightly older portion of that 22 to 40. And so we did an event called House Hunters UCLA, and we wanted to figure out what could we do that would be unique to this audience in our event. And so we sought out a professor at Anderson who could give a more academic perspective and really talk about the trends in Los Angeles, because we knew that there were a lot of events like Home Buying 101 that you could get from a real estate agent, but it wouldn't have the same UCLA feel. So it kind of speaks to the fact that we're trying to do some events that really are unique to what UCLA can bring, whether it's an academic perspective or something a little bit different than maybe what they're going to be invited to from other avenues. We're also working on a health event right now about healthy skin and thinking about what should we be doing in our as young alumni to preserve our health for later on. Another category that kind of speaks to some of the research was just thinking about what do young alumni find trendy? What are they interested in? And the other member of our team, Gloria, said, well, in Los Angeles, people are foodies. They love that. Let's see if we can build something around that. And hence grew the Bruins Foodies series. And what we did was we just started Googling young alumni, trying to find out people who would open restaurants. We continually look at the 30 under 30 Forbes list and try to find out, are there Bruins in the area or not in the area who would open a restaurant? And so the first event we did was about Cool House Ice Cream, and we had their founder, Natasha Case, who is a Bruin, got a grad degree in architecture, and she did a fantastic event. She told her story. She shared kind of a visual path as well of how they've gone from being an ice cream truck at, I'm forgetting the music festival that all the students go to. Coachella. Good, I'm not So from that to having multiple brick and mortar stores here in Los Angeles. And then we did a second one a few months ago with Blockheads, which is a shaved ice cream. The first location is on Sawtelle, and they now have 3 locations. And we're planning our third in the series. It's going to be next month, and it's featuring a guy named Josh Goldman, and he is kind of one of the most, kind of the leader in craft cocktails in Los Angeles, and he recently opened a tavern in Santa Monica. And so it's kind of our first foray into the alcohol world. We're aware that young alumni, that can be a common interest. And so this just speaks to the idea of trying to find niche things that maybe are trendy and a Bruin would find this inspiring element. And even if I'm not an entrepreneur, I'd love to hear about how did the Blockheads people, how did that happen? And what's been great is the 3 different Bruin foodies have had completely different paths, different financing, and so the type of story that they've shared has been very different.
One thing Patricia mentioned is, this is a really good example. Each of these programs we taped and we put them up on our YouTube channel. So recognizing that, you know, again, a limited number of people are going to come on site. We didn't do these all here, we did these around the city. But also, you can watch these, the versions of each of these programs, including also the entrepreneur one, et cetera. It's all online.
Yeah. And we're also experimenting along with branding with our Google on Air series, because we want to do more events where anyone, anywhere can see it, whether it's the YouTube video or the live version. And so we did our first one around the concept of living globally in December, and we're planning our next one for March. So look out for that. We're also looking at what other topics for Google on Air would make sense that might be a little bit more niche, and thus maybe the size of interest makes more sense for Google on Air than an in-person event, just in terms of cost savings.
Just out of curiosity, have you approached Jada De Laurentiis? I think at least attended UCLA?
She did, yeah. You know, we have thought about
Oh,
it.
she did.
We tried to get her for some very large scale events, and she said no, and so we kind of tried, you know, we'd love to, but I think we're realistic with her.
We also thought about trying to do something in Vegas.
Well, that got shut the heck out because we were told, A, she doesn't identify with UCLA,
That's it.
B, she is a total prima donna and is almost impossible to work with. And we have contacts with Caesars,
Yeah, no,
and they said, forget it, stay away from her, it's not worth the effort.
Do let me correct at least some pieces of that.
Yeah.
She does identify with UCLA. In fact, there's usually almost every single year she speaks at one of our commencements, you know, one of the department commencements. And she's come back here for a number of events, and we've got some folks in the college that actually do have a direct line to her.
Well, if we can do an
Yeah.
event there, we would love it because
Yeah, no, we would too.
her restaurant's kind of fallen in some bad reviews.
Yeah, well, we can talk further about that. We actually have some folks that do have a direct line to her. She definitely identifies with UCLA.
I have a question. So I belong to this young alumni group, and I would have loved to have gone to some of these events, but how do I get on these lists? Like, I don't.
Well, and that's a great point. We've been looking at the data that we pull and thinking about how far outside of Los Angeles are we pulling. And so something that's important to look out for is in Young Alumni Connect, we actually send that to all of California if you're, I think it's under 32, so that because we know someone might want their regional information, somebody might want the Young Alumni stuff, but we also make sure we encourage everyone to like the Young Alumni Facebook page, because even before maybe our website is up to date with a new event, we'll put a save the date on there, and that has everything regionally. And so that's an area we encourage young alumni, especially if maybe they haven't updated their contact info. Facebook is a very passive way that they can stay engaged, and not maybe that's as much as they want right now. So we encourage both.
But the events also are listed in our Connect that goes to everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
And then also it goes back to the last session that we had with social media. Even if a network shares this or retweets it on Twitter, that's how a lot of their young alumni can find out about this as well, so that they can know about the events that they might not know.
Another piece, oh, yeah.
When you guys are doing research, it's all, well, because you guys are here, but if you got, do you guys look outside at all? Of like Bay Area, Vegas, wherever
Yeah.
the case might be, and if you guys can't do it, to give us the information?
Yeah, and that's actually the hope is with people like Penny being along the East Coast is talking about ideas, and hopefully our team is a resource to help do the research on the person, and then theoretically the network runs it along with Penny as opposed to us, you know, flying to Philadelphia for an event or something. So that's something we actually just met on Thursday to talk more about that. So one other thing the Bruins Foodie speaks to is some comments from the interviews about we like things that are exclusive, so we want an event that we get to go to because we're Bruins, and so we're looking at more opportunities for things like that, and the Bruins Foodie seems to have spoken to that in a great and positive way. And we also heard them say, you know, they were very frank. They said, we're going to go if our friends are going. And so thinking about mechanisms, whether it's via Facebook, of finding a way to help them see whether or not their fellow Bruins are going to the event. And the example we had was we were up there in the Bay Area the day before Bruin Bash, which was the game, the pregame event for Stanford, and a lot of them around the room weren't going, and other people were, and they said, oh, I didn't know you guys were going, I would go. And we realized, where's that technological mechanism that can allow them to know that? Because they were very honest about the fact that essentially they might go, but they would be really encouraged if they knew that their buddies were going.
Well, and I think, Angela, one of the other thing that came out here is that the perception of the young alumni was that that was a group of people more like my age. It wasn't a group for, I don't even have any other folks to go to.
Right.
And in fact, that day, I know some of you were at that Stanford Bash. We had the Stanford Bash going on. Right outside our tent was a large group of young alumni that had been primarily affiliated with student government. They had their own party, all Bruins, right outside the tent. But they benefited from the band too.
Yeah, it was an impromptu 22 to 25 kind of beer fest going on next door. The last piece I just want to touch on is the communications that I mentioned with Young Alumni Connect. And one of the things that we've done to just kind of try to pull out this new audience is that our Bruin of the Day segment, which we do on Facebook, is generated by users. We ask people to email us, tell us about something that a friend that is a Bruin that's doing something amazing, and it speaks to that research of wanting to know what their fellow Bruins are doing. We also require that they then share the post on their own social media, because we realize that we want to make sure that Bruins know about the page and about the opportunity to highlight each other. And something that grew out of the Bruin of the Day post was this concept of Bruins in Love, which is about to have its second iteration in February. Last February, we did a piece on it with 5 couples. Sandy interviewed all of them, and it was fantastic. We shared the story on both the main alumni Facebook page and the alumni Facebook page and said, tell us if you know other Bruins in Love stories. And we got hundreds of posts on it. And so we've been following up with people getting their stories. And it's been wonderful to see that, no matter what their age is, we'd love to be able to highlight that. And I think they did a Bruin Babies one recently as well. And so just putting together content that speaks to them, but also that kind of allows them to see that we're there to connect you and kind of go away from the perception for some of the young alumni that the first time they might have heard from UCLA was for a gift. And we want to make sure they know, no, we've got programming, we've got events, and ways to connect. And so the Facebook and the different communication channels are a great way to try to, decrease that myth and let them know that we're here for them, whether it's for events or just to connect with fellow Bruins. So now I'm going to turn it over to Patricia.
So I know for some folks seeing this, you might think I'm only talking to the diversity alumni groups. Actually, what I think is really unique is our Bruins identified in so many different ways. So there are ways that a lot of your groups can actually work together to actually engage both your audiences for both groups. Right? And so we sort of wanted to share some of the things that some of the diversity alumni groups have done, because for some, actually, we don't have data for. Right? So they actually cold calling out to our communities to figure out how to find Bruins. And sort of in that way, I think that's actually some really good lessons learned about how do we engage audiences. So we just want to share some tools from them. So you can sort of see where they are at. These are some of the value systems of the diversity alumni groups. And I think a lot of these value systems are shared across all networks. So you do have that common ground. When you think about their mission statement, you probably have some of these similar words, right? Similar attitudes and sort of similar ways of wanting to engage with UCLA. So just take note of that. Lastly, a lot of our groups in the diversity realm go beyond alumni, right? So as you can see, of course, all of them work with alumni. They work with undergrad, graduate students, faculty, staff, and even other community members. I know PA at one point, you actually have some non-UCLA folks on your board to help sort of really think about what it means to engage and give back to UCLA. And these are actually coming sort of as an audit of our mission statements. Also to know, our student demographic is also changing, right? As UCLA and our society is ever dynamic and changing, so are our populations. And so I just want to give you sort of the racial background. This is only one lens that we can look at our Bruin community to understand where our students are. When we look at our alumni, these are our numbers in terms of who is contactable, in terms of the 416,000, right? So you can sort of see the different numbers that are around. So if you think your network is maybe only serving one culture, one group, you might want to think about that, because our alumni are super diverse. And there are ways that you can partner with our diversity groups, or as well as myself as a resource to think about that. So there's 3 main best practices I've seen from the diversity alumni groups that I would hope that you all can consider. One is, don't underestimate the power of a general body meeting. Sometimes we're like, why would anyone want to come out to this? It's all us talking about what we're doing. It actually has really offered a lot of our folks a chance to really get to know you. Because if you only offer social events, they think they need to know you to go, right? And so one example is, and everyone thought this was not doable, UVAA held a general body meeting here in James West, where we know parking is an issue, on a weekday. We thought we were getting no one. We had 70 new people show up because we're like, we really want to get involved, but we didn't know what you all are doing really, and they were able to really express what their activities were. They also have a really cool recruitment tool is they bring one alumnus to be featured as a keynote speaker, right? So they use the network of that person to bring people back. So if anyone around here knew Berkey Nelson, who was in Student Affairs, he was their first general body meeting speaker. So Berkey brought all his students that he knew from the past to come here to meet with him. The new one that they're going to be bringing in this upcoming general body meeting in February, which all of you are welcome to see this in action, is Dion Raymond, who's one of the new discrimination officers that were hired with the Vice Chancellor of Diversity. And she's also an alumnus and a past Acton student you can share. The other one on the left I really enjoy because it's actually Latino and Filipino alumni in a recruitment kind of way. They've been doing most of their things in West Side and downtown, so they decided to both go out to Pasadena to open informational meeting, right? Because we had not gone out there. And so very informal, no program, got to meet people and connect, and PAA and Latino were able to use those folks in their upcoming election, right? So that's one best practice. Don't underestimate the body of a general body meeting. The next one is collaborating with students, right? If we're thinking about the alumni pipeline, they be here for 4 years, they're going to be with you for the rest of their lives, right? And so we want to really build that in as second nature. This is our American Indian alumni. They do a powwow, which all you are welcome to. So if your networks want to come back to campus, it's a beautiful event where different Native American tribes from all over come together to celebrate. They actually have an ambassador. There's a Miss Powwow pageant where they send an they do actually their pageant was here. The winner gets $1,000, which is sort of low, and travels 25 different powwows representing UCLA. Think about recruitment that way. We also had our Muslim Alumni Association, our newest group. They paired with the student organization that celebrated the 50th anniversary, right? To figure out, and the inauguration of their group was there. I really love this photo. It was taken, they sort of did this photo group. It says the Muslim Student Association got him invited to 93 weddings and counting. Third one is community outreach. And I think particularly for the regional groups, this is one place that I think we can all tap into. Really thinking about things that are happening in your community, like all these fairs, these food festivals, these pride events. This one is Asian alumni. They teamed up with every single Asian nonprofit in LA to do a toy drive. Right? So not only did we draw people from UCLA, we drew people that were on other nonprofit boards that happen to be Bruins. They now had exposure. We go into areas that Bruins have not been in, right? So one was we did a send-off in San Gabriel Valley, right? San Gabriel Valley, we haven't had a lot of activity, particularly in sort of the Monterey Park area and Alhambra area. So they had a send-off, and we had so many people say this is the first time they ever engaged with UCLA. We represent at Pride, so we actually held a booth at LGBT Pride this year, and actually at OC Pride, right? Particularly for our LGBT alumni, we have no data collected at all. So we actually started with a list of 150 when I first started. The mailing list a year later now is 1,500, and it's us going out to community events and finding people. Actually, this was a recruitment tool. We told alumni to come by, use social media to say, we're making these t-shirts, come by and get one, and we found our alumni that way. They were super excited because they said USC had always been there, so they were excited to see us there this year. This one just happened last Wednesday. Latino alumni paired up with the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, and they were able to have access to all these new professionals. About 75, 100 people came out, and we found all our Bruins, pinned them with a little nice UCLA Bruin pin so people can network that way. And this is actually one of my favorite ones. Latino and Filipino paired up actually on Cesar Chavez Day, because that's celebrated in a lot of places in LA. And they had a movie screening where they brought Filipino farm workers at that time. That's actually the son of a very famous one, to watch a movie together, but also for the groups to meet each other. And actually the president at the time was actually half Latino and half Filipino, so it sort of worked out nice. So those are some of the best practices that we had shown, and I want to say this caveat. You know, you saw two versions. One, we are piloting the program on our own to see what are some things that are working, so we can share those practices for you. So when you look at that back of that pamphlet, that's why those things are so important, right? We're here to share those things with you. And when you talk about wanting to know who your data is, if you talk to your liaison, we can find ways to figure those things out. The second one is we wanted to share what your networks are doing, right? Because there's a lot of expertise in this room already. And so we wanted to share some of those things so you can talk to some of the groups to see what they're doing to make things work. I'm going to speak on behalf of the diversity alumni group, so sorry if this is completely what you want. But I know these groups are so open, and they're willing to partner with so many different people, because in the end, we're just trying to bring the rooms together, right? And so feel free. It actually helps, save on volunteer time. You get to meet new people and expand your reach.
And I think what you mentioned earlier when we asked different words about networks and you said collaborative, I think that's what this presentation is trying to show, is that a lot of you work with your alumni liaison, and that's great. But us as a team, we all get together and we talk as well. So when we're talking about programming and going forward, if you do have ideas for events, you can definitely contact those of you that work with me or whoever your liaison is. But we'll work with people in the office as well, whether it's for a young alumni program, diversity program, because that's what we want to do, to try to engage new members who may not have been engaged in the previous.
Just because you have a liaison doesn't mean you don't have access to the rest of us, right? So we work in a very strong matrix style, so we talk to each other all the time. So usually when I get a tip off about a certain alum, like this actually happened with Donaldson networking, right? I met an alumna over there who had worked for Sephora, great sort of person around sort of makeup and also young. Introduced her to Angela to think about women breaking barriers. She also then hosted a welcome to the city. So we find different ways for our volunteers to engage, and that's actually what's really important for us. Because one area that I think Angela provides is, right now when you look at participation model, it's either you come to an event or be on a board, right? And so we're trying to create so those intermarrying pathways for people to really get involved. And I think collaborating amongst the networks can help with that.
When just talking about collaboration and like what's happening in the community, one of our events, we have one girl from APA who attended the first Orange County Bruins event, and so we ended up talking afterwards, and now we are co-hosting an event for the Tech Festival, which is really kicking off the Lunar New Year. So it's like great timing, and yeah, I'm excited to try to collaborate with the other groups.
Any other collaborations that people want to talk about?
Well, it's sort of tentatively in the works. I had to come up with an idea to maybe get all the California or whomever else would like to get involved from on campus for a young alum, barbecue, whatever, use funds, collaborate together, build everybody's network. If you're going to the west side, you're going to Sacramento, wherever you might be, you can kind of direct in that category and just try to build a network that way. So we're actually, alumni associations are coming on campus, not to recruit, but to show we're here. And it would also help because I feel sometimes like we're on an island, Northern California is on an island, and that we'll collaborate, but we don't know anybody down here. And so it would be a great opportunity to work together as a group on the whole.
Thank you.
We work a lot with the UCBC Center in Washington, D.C., so like students are out there for a quarter studying abroad in D.C., so we usually try to move them into events that are appropriate for them and sort of gauge, because a lot of people who ended up coming out to where we are started in the UCBC program, or some sort of study in the UCBC program, so that's one thing. Or we also work with them in terms of all UC programming, and we also are funded to be impactful.
Dusty?
Seems counterintuitive, but we're actually right now working on a UCLA and USC blend mixer centered around the next UCLA-USC basketball game. Part of the idea around it is not just fostering sort of a greater community within the LGBT community, but also the opportunity, maybe your two friends who are, one went to UCLA, one went to USC, they're looking for a place to go to be part of the game. In this city, it's something that is a little more inclusive and may offer us the opportunity to get some UCLA alumni to be able to work.
I'm not a fan of the term, but there's like Trojans, right? Bruins first, then Trojans. People have done multiple degrees for Bruins, right? So they're I saw a hand over here, and then Sergio.
We actually did, Westside did a mixer, and it worked really well. Just FYI, either you tell people to wear.
Metal detector's on the way.
Yeah. Well, no, you tell people to wear the colors, or you tell people to not wear the colors. Because we just did it like a mixer, and then there were fluorescent.
And so I've taken advantage of Bruin Plus a lot, and because at our monthly events, we have a professional person presenting on, certain topics, and Bruin professionals have been a great help in terms of fantastic speakers, so don't forget about them.
I was just going to say, don't forget about other universities. It can be very interesting. We put together collaborative events with Yale, for instance, in Sacramento, and the University of Virginia. And there was some talk, the Oregon alumni were trying to put together an Act 12 alumni event in Sacramento. It was a huge undertaking. I don't think it ever happened, but it's still something of interest that could be a very fun thing to think about.
We've also seen that in San Diego, which is great. They've done multiple young alumni events, one with Stanford, one with Cornell, and it seems to be really exciting for young alumni to be able to come together with another university. Just one more thing I want to mention that Patricia referenced, Welcome to the City. That was a new initiative that we tried this year. The idea being that we were thinking about young alumni, and when they move to a new city, whether for grad school or because they've graduated, they need to know that there's an alumni network there, and so we encourage different networks in the month of October to host something that maybe is unique to their city. So there was the Petacycle in Philadelphia, and there was the Sephora event that happened in San Francisco, and we're hoping to continue to expand that because we heard from young alumni they love some type of kickoff event to know that, hey, there's a network of Bruins in this new city where I know no one. And so we're looking for that to be coming because it was a great collaboration between young alumni, the regional networks, the diversity networks, so that everyone could be involved, and I think it will grow even more this coming fall.
Well, on that note, we hope you enjoy the next session because it is about you all networking. So hopefully taking some of the conversations here into those spaces. But we look forward, if you ever need help, please do not hesitate to contact any of us, even if you feel